Mary Jane, cannabis, smoke, weed, tree, haze, the good stuff, ganja.
This year coming up, 2022, I'm going to abstain from all forms of alcohol and all forms of THC for an entire year.
What is your balance? What is your intensity, your frequency? Are you aware of how it affects you? Because everything we do has some type of pro and con.
The number one things you'll hear is, I can stop at any time, right? It's like, well, have you?
If you do partake, how many people have actively tried to fast?
Never go to drink when you're sad. And that applies to, I think, 420 big time as well. Or else you're just putting a Band-Aid over it and having to deal with it later.
Food is a drug, THC is a drug, alcohol is a drug, and all drugs in the body functions the same.
Oh, you had a bad day, like smoke. Go ahead, just sit down, right? Like, and it's like, well, if we get into that habit, now we got people that hate their job and smoke weed every day, right? Like,
when I get off of work, I can't wait to take a hit because I want that instant release.
Until enough people think it's okay and we're not going to get yelled at by the people, it's going to be illegal until we can make money off of it.
All drugs dehydrate certain parts of your brain so that you can have the effect that you're having.
Do you have to go here to make it better, or could you do something different to make it better?
I see it in music. It's the cool thing to do. I see it in the movies. It's the cool thing to do.
These are powerful substances around us, whether they're legal or not. They're still powerful. They can suck you in.
We've got to bring awareness to this stuff. And I think our episode today is really important for that.
Welcome to the Good Life.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back. This is the Good Life Visual Audio Podcast. I got Stu here with us. Say what's up, Stu.
What's up, y'all?
Got Kobi in the building also.
What up, though?
And as always, I'm Chris. Guys, we're back diving into another episode of how to design your life with extraordinary health, wealth, and mindset. Find us everywhere you listen or watch, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. Make sure you share this with a friend. Hit that thumbs up because today, again, we got another good one for you. Happy 420 for everybody that's out there that is partaking. Today is a day of dancing and celebration for some. But today on The Good Life, we're just going to have a conversation about this good old 420 tradition and some of the health components and maybe even some of the other components behind it. We're going to really have I don't want to say a debate, but a conversation around good old Mary Jane, cannabis, smoke, weed, tree, haze, the good stuff, ganja. I don't know how many things you want to call this.
That's pretty good.
You're on a roll there, man. I didn't want to interrupt. You're on a roll.
But I'm gonna pass it over to Kobi now, and we'll start this conversation. So let's dive in.
Man, I think this is a very important conversation. One that I think we're going to be having more and more as we move along here in society, as the years come and go, because, quite frankly, it's becoming more prevalent. I was talking to somebody yesterday who's a little bit older than myself, and frankly, most of us here on the screen, and was explaining to me that, you guys think you invented this stuff, man. This stuff has been around a long time. We've been smoking that reefer for a long time, right? So I thought it was a hilarious conversation because it reminded me that it's been around for a long time, and quite frankly, it's something that we're going to be dealing with more and more. Our children are going to be dealing with it at an earlier age. We're seeing it in more movies, we're hearing it in more songs. It's like not as taboo anymore. So it's something that we really have to talk about from the health perspective, from the financial perspective, and I think even most importantly from the mental perspective and the mindset perspective, because our mindset around this stuff as a society, right, is shifting. So how do we deal with it? And I think we're perfectly positioned as individuals to really talk about this on a detailed level. So we got some questions for you guys today. We got some opinions that we're going to express. We got some other stuff. Go ahead, bro.
Before we dive in, client takeaways. Do we want to do client takeaways? I think we should dive in. really quick before we get into the cannabis conversation, as always, we've been going back in and talking about some of the takeaways that we've had this past week with some of our clients so that you all that are listening can get some value as well. So whether it be in the health, wealth, or mindset, life coaching side of things, we're going to give you some highlights. So Stu, you want to start us off? What was a takeaway that you had this week, or something that you got from a client? You want to share?
I think my client takeaway this week was I was working with a guy earlier today who runs a law firm, and he was trying to figure out why he continues to have like this particular issue of delegating different tasks. Like he grew up, he did the whole thing himself, he began to get more employees, trying to delegate just hasn't really been working for him. And part of the reason was, as he's been trying to delegate, he's also kind of been going through some kind of like identity crisis stuff. And turns out he's just tied his identity as a hard worker to doing the work himself. So it's been a really tough breakthrough to try and get him to actually offload it so he can get out of the business and working on the business. And it was a really nice moment, and he's got a couple of good conversations and a plan to make that happen. So excited for him.
That's dope. That's good stuff. And as always, right, like being able to have these conversations with people, somebody out there that might be listening, that might be going through the identity crisis or something along those lines, while still trying to make changes, shifts, all those things, right? We have to get some clarity in those areas. So obviously you're able to help people out with that stuff. On my side this week, on the money side of things, again, always having conversations. I keep telling you guys, this month, April's financial literacy month. So I'm having even more conversations around money, around finances, around our personal finances. Been giving a bunch of talks. Big thing that, again, continues to pop up. I know we've touched on this. It's really the awareness of people's money. People just aren't aware of certain things. But this past week, I had a couple conversations with people that really, after they were aware, they already had the awareness. They really needed strategy, and they needed some form of guidance to their next level, right? And so that is the takeaway. A lot of times with our money, we don't get guidance. We don't heed financial coaches or planners or people that are professionals to help us. We kind of just take the advice from our peers and the people around us, and right, those things. But the people I ran into this week, they were so relieved to have an actual conversation with a financial professional, because they just needed some guidance. They just had a few questions. They just needed to kind of untangle a couple of financial kind of thoughts they had, and then they could see their light and see their way through. That is incredibly important to know for anyone that's listening, right? Having a coach, especially on the money side of things, it will help you get clarity on the places that you're trying to go financially. It's not just about telling you to invest here or invest there. It's about getting you to understand where you want to go, putting that plan in place. And most times people just need a strategy. So that was the takeaway for me this week.
That's fantastic. Appreciate you sharing, bro. For me, I'm actually going to share more so from conversations that pertain to our 420 celebration today that I've had with clients. And these are professional, high level, high achieving individuals who have really good jobs. So we're not really talking about, the college or kind of young folks, that sort of crowd. We're talking about high level professionals, with attorneys, doctors, high executive sales and stuff of that nature, who are sort of re-examining their relationship with alcohol, with weed, with those two in particular, and then with food, from the perspective of, hey, this is a drug, and I've never really looked at it as how is this affecting my performance? How is this affecting my energy? How is this affecting, or am I using this as a crutch? Am I using this as an emotional crutch? Am I using this as a performance crutch, right? Caffeine falls into that category as well. And really bringing to piggyback what you were saying, Chris, is we find ourselves going through this process of bringing awareness to how am I using this substance? Is it serving me still? Like at some point, it was serving me. Is it still serving me? And then do I need to go through the process of detoxing to pull from or arrange my relationship with this particular substance? So, as you guys know, 3 steps to the process here with the CTM family. It's gut, breath, and movement. But the gut process is a detox process in which we go through and re-examine, rearrange, reconstitute our relationship with all things, including food, weed, alcohol, and all of that. And one thing that I found for sure is that one pattern that I've noticed is that folks get comfortable where they don't have a comparison, especially with weed, because folks don't really talk about the usage of it, especially at the higher level, right? I know a few attorneys that don't talk about it because I'm an attorney. Well, I don't, right? You can only imagine that crowd. It's like, right. So they don't really compare to like how other folks are using it. Where am I in this comparison? And as you guys know, if you've ever consumed cannabis or been around a crowd that consumes cannabis, one of the number one things you'll hear is, I can stop at any time, right? It's like, well, have you? I can stop whenever I want. It's not a problem. I can always stop. So then we really test that through a solid food vacation juice feast. As you guys both know, you've been through that. Let's actually test that. All right. Can you go 5 days, 10 days? And at that point, folks realize, oh, maybe my relationship isn't what I thought it was. Maybe this is something I need to give it another thought. So, if you are in that position, just know there's no shame over here, especially on the Good Life Show. We have a lot of experience with this stuff. We're not judging. But especially with me and through the CTM process with the CTM family, it is something we take a look at, because it is a huge component of your health. A huge component of your health. And if you're using it as a crutch, how many times do we hear about individuals who have a particularly stressful job that at the end of the day, something happens and everybody's like, well, how did that ever happen? Where did that come from? Right? It's like, the person's been doing that for years, doing that for years. Nicotine is one as well. I'll put in that, right? They've been surviving for years, right? How many times you see a writer, who's writing, or an artist who's with a cigarette in their hand or whatever. We've got to bring awareness to this stuff, and I think our episode today is really important for that.
Amen. Well put. I think the awareness piece is so key. I heard a good analogy the other day about how so many people are like,
That was a comment I just laughed at. I got to explain that comment I just laughed at on our back page.
On IG, yeah, making
IG.
talk crazy just by smelling it. Yeah.
Good.
So for me, like, the awareness is the first piece in like so many things we talk about. So I'm really glad we're starting off from this point, because I think a lot of people, I've received a lot of judgment for my participation with 420. And especially coming from like a mental health field, there's a lot of thoughts on how could somebody do that, et cetera. And my counter is, are you even aware of the substances you're taking in that affect your state of being? Alcohol, coffee, all the things you just touched on. And are you able to have such a strong power of judging this substance if you've never tried it? And if you are perhaps overindulgent or not even aware that you can't fast from those items. So good spot to start.
It's so good. It's so good. Every time we talk fasting, it always comes up in my mind. Could be what you say, right? Whatever you can't fast from controls you, right? Which you can't fast from controls you. And I'm curious, as we go down this 420 conversation, how many people have actively, if you do partake, how many people have actively tried to fast? Like actively been like, you know what? Let me just put it down for a week. Let me just put it down for a month or whatever that is, like actively done it. And then how hard was it for you, right? Because that'll be some telltale signs of if this is something that we should be attacking and we should, be focused on. So wherever you want to lead the conversation, Kobi, it's on you, man.
Hey, listen, I want to start off, by kind of sharing my experience a little bit. December of last year. I'll start share my experience and then share a little piece here that kind of examines the relationship of food, um, marijuana, and also just drugs in general, whatever your drug of choice is. Because I do believe everyone that I've ever come in contact with abuses some sort of drug. Negativity is a drug, by the way, guys. I noticed this the other day. I was like, you love to be negative. Right? You just want to find something to complain about all the time because just negative, negative, negative. Oh God, this sucks. Right? It's just tats all this negativity because there's a payoff. And that's what a drug is. There's a payoff. There's some sort of payoff, right? So for me, I don't put anything out there, especially with clients that I don't practice. So last year I was looking at I was looking up to the new year, seeing what sort of thing am I going to put in place to challenge me this year? What sort of things am I going to put in place to help me grow as an individual, as a coach, as an entrepreneur this year? What sort of thing am I going to do that I've never done before to really push me to the next level? And I did my meditation, my prayers, my whatever you want to call it. And I came up with, you know what? This year coming up, 2022, I'm going to abstain from all forms of alcohol and all forms of THC for an entire year because I want to first and foremost put myself in an uncomfortable situation, multiple uncomfortable situations. I thought it was one. It's multiple. It turns out, guys, that every social situation mostly has one of these. That's what I've discovered, right? It turns out every single one of them requires some sort of partaking of some. And guess what, guys? If you're not, for folks that don't drink, you probably already noticed this. Don't even bother. Don't go to no parties. Don't go to any dinners. Just right, or be prepared to go and have excellent conversations in your natural state, not in your altered state. And that's the type of stuff. Now, as we keep going here, I'll share with you stuff that I've discovered. It's been 110 last time I checked. I haven't checked today. Days since I made this decision, and I'm going. First quarter was tough. But now I feel in a roll, and I've tons and tons of benefits, guys. I'm not saying it's for everybody. I'm not saying everybody should do it. I'm just saying I was at a point in my life where I was like, why not challenge myself? Why not put myself in an uncomfortable situation? Why not push myself to grow? Why not push myself to do this? I talk about fasting all the time. To me, this is like the ultimate form of this fasting right here. So tons of benefits for me. And I can talk about that as we go down in the program and share with you guys. But I wanted to share this, poem, writing, whatever it is, to get you guys to think about this stuff a little differently. And it's, people eat food to suppress emotions. People do drugs. In this case, let's talk about weed, to suppress emotions. All right. When you quit eating food or fast, you have withdrawal symptoms. Both of you have been through the program. Have you experienced this? You have withdrawal symptoms when you fast? Yeah.
Absolutely.
From
this has been good for me.
Say that again, Stu.
From food, for sure, I've experienced a withdrawal. I'm not sure so much about the alcohol or THC component, but food, absolutely. That withdrawal was tough.
I would say for most people, when you quit drugs, you get withdrawal symptoms. All right. For most people, we eat food for an experience, not necessarily because we're hungry. Right. And for most people, we do drugs for experience, or we smoke for an experience. And we'll talk about what that experience is here a little bit. The organs can process food, and the organs process drugs. All right. Eating gets you high off of the release of stored up endorphins in the body. Doing drugs gets you high off of the releases of endorphins stored up in the body. It's not the drug itself. It's the drug pushing the button in the body to release endorphins that are already stored in your body that gets you high. All right. And I think understanding this little piece in and of itself for me was was so eye-opening, because if that's true, that means that there are other ways to release. I already have the endorphins. I'm not getting the endorphins from the THC. I'm not getting the endorphins from, that's not actually, the THC is simply the thing that pushes the button. It's like when you have two components that meet, right? It's a thing that pushes the button that released endorphins that's already in my system, by the way. It's already there. So if I can find another way to release it, I'm home free. Right. So food also stimulates reactions and chemical releases from the body, like I just stated, and drugs stimulate reactions and chemical releases from the body. The body already has all the answers. Right. You can enjoy food for entertainment. You can enjoy drugs for entertainment. You don't actually need solid foods. You don't actually need drugs. Now, I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback for this, but the truth of the matter is you don't. I've tried it. You really don't. And yeah, I wanted to put that from a health perspective, set that up for us to realize, first and foremost, that maybe we demonize things we call illicit drugs too much. And maybe we hype up things we don't put in that category too much. For me, when I read something like this, or when I put this into perspective, it kind of brings me to the middle. Not saying that things that we call illicit drugs or whatnot are necessarily horrible. And I'm not saying things that we kind of deem as normal, like food, as like the best thing and must have. I think I spend a lot of my time pulling folks from this side to the middle and pulling folks from this side to the middle a little bit more. Right. I think we're on an extreme on both. So I'll pause right there, because I could probably keep going on that for a minute and let you guys chime in. What are your thoughts on that? As like almost food is a drug, THC is a drug, alcohol is a drug, and all drugs in the body functions the same. They all function the same. All right. So why do we over demonize one, and why do we overhype the other? What is it? Because one is illegal and one isn't? Is it because everybody does it? Like, what's going on?
I think we absolutely over demonize the things that are illegal. You know, we are raised in a society where we have to think that everything that is against the law is completely evil or just morally wrong. A lot of people forget that laws are really designed to help us coexist in a perfect world, and in a way that does the least amount of damage to ourselves and others. Just because something's against the law doesn't necessarily mean that there is a moral impact behind that thing. But some people really mix that up. If it's against the law, it must be immoral. It's not the case. So I do think this over demonization happens, and I think it's a very well orchestrated ploy to basically, I want to be able to tax what's legal, and if it's illegal, then that means I, the government, have no control over it. So until enough people think it's okay and we're not going to get yelled at by the people, it's going to be illegal until we can make money off of it. I think that's the root cause of all of these problems.
That's right. And then they have to add fear around it, right? Once they realize they can't control it, they have to add fear around it. So I agree 1,000% with that, Stu. And right, to add on, it's not just the laws and the government side, it's also our society, our parents, right? I think about this 420 conversation. I remember having asthma as a kid, and my mom telling me that if I smoked anything, I was going to die, right? Like anything, I'm going to have asthma attack, I'm going to die, right? And so like just in general, just that process in your brain over time of like what my mom tells me, and then all of a sudden figuring out that that's not the case, right? When I do try it, that I'm not going to die. Then it starts to really get to those beliefs of like, well, what do I believe? Why do I believe this? And so I think this over demonization of specifically cannabis, right? Like specifically, since we're talking that on 420, but like all drugs in general, right now. And Stu, you talked about, right, the microdosing and like what starts to happen as you become more aware of the benefits of herbal medicine, plant-based medicine, whatever you want to call it, right? Like once you realize the benefits of those, you then start to change your beliefs, change how you think about it. And so you're more likely to get the proper information, not be so much on the extremes, and really be able to think about it with a clear head, pros and cons. And so that's where we are. I think in my mind, I still think that there is an over demonization, but nothing necessarily that if you don't have the education or you can't, right, like find the resources, you can figure out, right? You can figure out all these things of what is propaganda, what was taught to you versus what is fact and what is truth. So we're trying to bring you some of that stuff today. That's why we're talking about it.
That's what the good life's about, open-minded.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, guys, I'm going to take the other side of that just because you guys both kind of took the same side. And it's not necessarily that I disagree, but I think there is another perspective that can be offered here. One, you guys just spoke about it being over demonized. I also think, the way I look at it, for example, right, over medicine is really having something in the amount of which is going to bring your body back to harmony. And we call it medicine. You can take that same substance and overconsume, and it becomes something that's taking your body out of harmony. So I think you got to ask yourself, why are you consuming what you're consuming? What amounts are you consuming it, and what is it doing to the system? Because I could also look at society and take the other side of what you guys just said and say, at this point, cannabis to me is not actually. I could argue that it's actually the cool thing to do, right? It's actually the cool kids that are doing it now. You see it in, if I look in media, I see it in music. It's the cool thing to do. I see it in the movies. It's the cool thing to do. I see it in basically that's what the cool kids are doing. All right. So I could point to tons and tons of media stuff that's actually more so, especially targeted towards the younger folks, as like, hey, this is cool, right? This is fine. There's nothing wrong with it. There's no issue whatsoever. But I would take the other side of that and say it is, because we're doing the opposite extreme of that, which is we're not providing education in the sense of like, how should it be used, right? So let me give you a little quick thing. For example, consider that depression, grief, sadness is processed in the lungs, right, and the colon. And if you feel emotions as they're being processed, right? When you experience depression, you dehydrate the lungs by smoking marijuana. You shut down that process. And in shutting down that process, you mistakenly feel as if you're happier in that moment. But the truth of the matter, chemically speaking, you're not. You've just shut down the process of actually processing that grief. You just stopped processing that grief. And all one did is just simply store that grief as plaque in the lungs, in the colon, and just stop that process of of feeling that grief. So you don't deal with it then and now. Same way that opiates work, right? It's not that the pain doesn't exist or the thing that's causing the pain doesn't exist. You just pause it. You just put it on pause. Well, guess what happens when those feel-good endorphins are no longer released? You either need to consume more cannabis or opioids or whatever it is that's stopping it, or you're going to have to start dealing with that grief. And especially when you detox, when you go through a process like we teach over here, and you start to go through that, all that stored up depression, sadness, grief that you stored up in the lungs, when you stop, right? When you stop partaking, when you take, and then you actually, that plaque buildup starts to actually be processed. You actually process old emotions. So one thing I always tell folks that go through a solid food vacation juice feast is like, hey, be prepared to have emotions come up that you have no idea where they came from. Why? Because you paused them from months ago, years ago. You haven't dealt with them, right? So what I'm saying is that we in kind of countering this over demonization narrative, we've perhaps gone too far the other way, as if there is zero there's zero side effect to it, which is just not true. That's just not true. And I'm not speaking from a place of like, I tested it in the labs. Nah, y'all, I know this stuff. This is I'm giving you firsthand experience, as in not having grief that I did not process and putting that on pause, right? Thinking that I was okay, all was fine. But all it led to was I needed more and more and more and more of whatever your choice is. It doesn't really even matter. Today, we just happen to be talking about cannabis because it's 420. Putting that on hold, pausing that, and releasing feel-good chemicals in the body, that's fine if you have a broken leg on a football field, right? And you need to not feel that pain for a second so that you can be operated on so that your leg can then be healed itself. But what happens if you keep popping those opioid pills in larger and larger amounts? It becomes a problem. That's what we're not telling our kids, right? That's what when there's nothing wrong whatsoever, right? And the kid thinks, I'm bored, so I'm just going to light up something because I'm bored. There's nothing wrong with you. That's not medicine. You're just bored. That's not medicine.
I think I think we're dealing with like different sample sizes, but obviously we are. But for me, I can say that the folks that raised me in their age bracket of about 65 plus demonize the heck out of anything non-alcohol, and anything that is alcohol, coffee, sugar, all these things that we know are bad. I mean, like junk food, all these things. Oh, that's okay to do because the government said it's okay. So I do think there is a portion of the population that does over demonize it. I think the question, and this is where I think we're really resonating, is what is your balance? What is your intensity, your frequency? Are you aware of how it affects you? Because everything we do has some type of pro and con. And what I've noticed is, for me, when I am functioning in 100% accordance with like the healthiest thing I could do, or like the most productive, or just like the most of anything, I lose a piece of some type of like exploration or learning process about who I am and what I actually want to be doing. So I think it's all about the intention. If your intention is to go out there, and this is for anybody, like if your intention is to go out there and feel good, to suppress an emotion, like you're going out to drink, you're going out to get high or do whatever substance because you're sad, man, I think you are touching on exactly what Kobi is worried about here, because that is such a way to develop this, I'll deal with this emotion later. I think the best advice I ever got was never go to drink when you're sad. And that applies to, I think, 420 big time as well, or else you're just putting a Band-Aid over it and having to deal with it later. So intention is key here, and awareness. Absolutely. Why are you doing this thing?
It's funny because I feel like that's why most people do pick up the habit, or whether it's drinking or weed or whatever. It's like, it's to deal with an emotion. It's why I feel like it's why we do all the stuff that we do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and that, again, why we're saying is because that over time, right, builds up a dependency of something that you should be processing. And right, shoulds, but like, it's not great to hold on to these negative emotions or these things that are hurting just because right, you don't want to deal with it right now. And I think that is, you hit the nail on the head. Could be like, that's the message I think we do have to start sharing with the kids, because that does resonate with me, right? Like, yeah, we've over demonized, but like, understand that like there is a pro and a con. There is an effect of something if you're just doing this because you're bored, or if you're choosing to do it because you had a bad day, right? Because that's also the narrative that's out there. It's like, oh, you had a bad day, like smoke, go ahead, just sit down, right? Like, and it's like, well, if we get into that habit, now we got people that hate their job and smoke weed every day, right? Like, it's like you do both because you're trying to like suppress. So yeah.
And I hear what both of you are saying. I think, the reason I'm taking, and I could easily take the other side of this argument, by the way, guys. So, but the reason I'm taking this side today is because I think that awareness for me took a long time for me to really see. And I'm sharing that with somebody who I know has not realized that they're struggling yet. They haven't realized it quite yet. They are, but they haven't quite realized that, you know what? when I get off of work, I just can't wait to have a drink. When I get off of work, I can't wait to take a hit, right? Because I want that instant release from whatever it is that I'm dealing with. And that becomes a crutch over time because I do it maybe once a month, then once a week, then once a day, then it gets going, right? Or I can't be in social situations and not have a drink because I don't like people at that point. I'm annoyed, I'm irritated, I'm not enjoying myself, right? Or I'm bored all the time. So the way that I get excited or stimulate things in me is to have an external thing come inside. Guys, when that's the case, you're at that is the textbook definition of dependence. To have something external that does something internal that you want to happen that you can't do on your own. So what do you need to continuously do? Get more of that external to come in internally. And that's the fundamental thing, right? Whether you're doing that with food, weed, alcohol, or whatever it is, that's what you're doing. And when that thing isn't there, you're going to have withdrawals. And you seek that thing out to get into a particular state, right? So you create that cycle. And it's not only, we've talked about to deal with a negative effect, negative emotions, it's also to get you in quickly into a positive state, right? So you could be at a neutral state, for example, right? And then it's also just to, there's nothing wrong. I feel fine. I mean, I'm all good, but if I had a drink, you know what I'm saying? But if I had a this, right, it would instantly take me there, right? Well, I think that's what I want to highlight in this conversation today is because I don't think we talk about that piece enough. I think perhaps, and Stu, I appreciate what you bring up in that, like a particular generation or a particular group will say no to this facet of things, but not to this, right? I'm talking about all of it. Right. That's where I'm talking about all of it. And that's why I keep bringing up food, because we all eat, and we don't eat because we are about to die. Most of us do not eat because we're about to die. Most of us eat because we're bored. Most of us eat because it's time to eat. Who said it was time to eat? Something external from you said it was time to eat. The clock said it was time to eat. The calendar said it was time to eat. Your mom said it was time to eat, right? Most of us, we don't partake on these things because our body needs it for biological function, because it brings people together. Well, that kind of sounds like alcohol and weed as well to me, right? Because it's part of my culture. Because I hear these stuff all the time. And guys, what I started noticing, I was like, this is sounding an awful lot like just a drug. Like this is not that far off, like at all. But that's fine. But God forbid you pull out a crack pipe.
Whoa,
right?
buddy. Whoa.
Yeah, exactly. Got it, right? And what I think is interesting, it's like, oh yeah, well, whether that actually messes people up. I present to you that food is killing people at a rate astronomically higher than crack is.
Absolutely.
Right.
I think
so. Why do we react like that?
There was one key phrase that I really loved what you said about in there is, can you do it on your own, is the concept. I think everyone has to assess if you are trying to get to this quick state of happiness, escape boredom, is this the only way? Are you also familiar and able to demonstrate being able to do that through exercise, sunshine, breath work, proper nutrition? Can you have alternatives? Because I think that if you don't have those alternatives, right there with you, you're dependent on a thing to provide you with a certain way. If you have numerous alternatives and you're able to walk the line and like find the own balance for you of it, if Monday through Friday, the way that I take care of my body and just whatever, if that's like clean eating, no alcohol, no THC, no whatever, if you're able to get to those same levels of experiencing life to the fullest, who's to say Saturday can't be something different? And I think that's what everybody has to look at. Are you actually able to get that same effect through other means? Because if not, I think Kobe's hit on the head. You're flirting with dependency.
Yep. And I don't think people have explored that side. Right. If I think of everyone, again, we're talking 420. So if I think of everyone that, would, in your example, could be like, I'm fine, but if I smoke this joint, like, this is going to make this walk better. This is going to make this food better. This is going to make this experience better. So I'm just going to do that. I think, again, this becomes the conversation that we have to start having of like, do you know all other alternatives to make it better? Is it just like, do you have to go here to make it better? Or could you do something different to make it better? Does it need to be better? What is it that's resonant, right? That's sitting in you that says it's not okay just where I'm at. I want to go here. These are some of the like kind of, again, conversations and questions I think we have to start asking.
I think that's critical, man. And I highlighted piece you just said that, do I need it to be? Because I think there's what's wrong with sitting with uncomfortability? Like what's wrong with sitting with that grief? What's wrong with feeling your way through?
I don't think there's anything wrong.
I'm not. That's that's putting the question out to the
listener.
Okay. Yeah, putting it out to the listener.
I'm gonna observe.
yeah. Because we come from a state of something is wrong. I need to fix it. Well, something's wrong with what? Something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with what? Something's wrong with the environment. What's wrong, right? And so, what I teach, and we can move on to kind of the other aspects that we wanted to discuss, whether it be the personal finance, the industry aspect of marijuana, et cetera. But this is where I think the core of my program and the way I think about it is ultimately we want to be healthy because we want to be free. We want freedom. We want freedom of movement. We want freedom to do things with our body that we want to do it with. We want freedom. So at the end of the day, if you're not able to examine what it is that you're dependent on, all the way from drugs that scare people to the ones that's accepted by most people, such as food. If you're not able to examine that and look at and go to the root of the things that are causing some of the symptoms that we don't like, you're not able, I don't care what workouts you do. I don't care what breath, whatever you do, you're not going to be able to experience that full state of freedom. I've seen some people that look extremely aesthetically appealing and are just not, they've simply replaced alcohol with working out. Right? They get that release endorphin from somewhere. Well, at least it's healthier. Yeah, except now you're like whittling away and you're like there's nothing left to you, or now that you're so stiff. Like harmony, right? And not saying I have it, but I think that when we think from that perspective, then we don't over demonize something that's perfectly natural. We don't overindulge in something that's perfectly natural. We don't, because we're in a state of harmony and we don't need something outside of ourselves. We can have it, but we don't need it to be at a place that we want to be at. And that's why Feasting Your Way to Harmony, the book, is coming out here soon. So you guys, you definitely make sure you're ready to purchase that. Yes, sir.
Bro, that's a slick fucking title, man.
That might be the first time I don't drop the title out here.
I think so. It's a good life first. Coming
out.
I have a super quick question for you guys. So what percentage of people do you think use substances? Like, let's just, we'll limit it down. 420. What percentage of people use THC to just feel good out of the people that use it? America. And when I say feel good, let me say
people that I know.
To escape emotions.
Gotcha.
To feel good, to escape emotions, 95.
Okay.
95.
I'd probably put it about 80.
That's funny. I was gonna go right in between that. I was actually gonna say like 90%.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Like 9 out of every 10.
And I think here's like the critical piece on my end from like the mental side. Let me go ahead and pull up the quote. I told you I'll pull the quote. I love this quote so much. And there's two to pick from, but a substance is simply an exploratory instrument like a microscope or telescope, except this one is inside of you instead of outside of you. Basically, you can use a particular substance to explore your reality through a different lens and learn, like alcohol, marijuana, to kind of like depressant and exploratory ways to figure out your shadow, the things that you are grieving, the things that you are not bringing up. It's one of the reasons why there's two stages of grief. The first one being derangement. When you actually derange for a temporary moment what you're experiencing logically, you give yourself a chance to figure out what's actually happening emotionally. So if you are able to use it with an intention like that, understanding that these are powerful substances around us, whether they're legal or not, they're still powerful. They can suck you in. If you are able to do that, cool, you can become your own doctor. You can become your own therapist, psychiatrist, whatever. Or you can go a traditional route and go to a psychiatrist who will prescribe you what statistics indicate. So if you want more control over it, try something different. But I think the intention here is key. And I really wanted to bring that up because I know people that use them for these types of ways, myself included.
I think that's totally fair. Can you read that full quote again?
Yes. So there's two versions. The first one, in this case, Alan Watts is talking about more of a psychedelic. He said that LSD, I would argue that this could be anything from alcohol, coffee, Mary Jane, whatever, is simply an exploratory instrument like a microscope or telescope, except this one is inside of you instead of outside of you. You are able to look at yourself through a different lens. And the question is, are you able to step away and learn some of these things and take care of these things when you're not on that substance? If you are not, what is your intention? You could be into escapism.
So sorry, where does the quote end? And
outside of you. Outside of you was the last.
Okay, so what was the last line of that again?
Except this one is inside of you instead of outside of you.
Okay. I would love if Mr. Watts was still around to expand on the inside of you, outside of you piece, because that would be an interesting piece for me, because that would clarify a lot of where he's going. Because I think I understand on a general level, or overstand on a general level. I think I would be very curious about what he sees as inside of you versus outside of you, because that may be my whole damn point. Because that can you guys hear me?
I can hear you now.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yeah, because I think that's huge. Because I don't disagree. I'm just cautious as to who I tell that to. I don't disagree.
Yeah. I've never actually gone live or talked about this in a public setting. So this is
sure.
Because it's totally very controversial.
I totally agree with him. But it's a shortcut. And I think when you take shortcuts, you could get lost.
Oh, yeah.
That's a bar. Hey,
yeah.
You got to get that one. When you take shortcuts, you get lost.
No, he said you could get lost. And I would also say that if you take the standard interstate from what everybody tells you to do, you can get lost on that thing just in a different way.
No, not from what everybody tells you to do.
What do you mean?
I don't advise people to do what everybody tells you to do.
I'm not saying that you are. I'm saying
right. I don't think it's the common path. I actually don't think the path I'm referring to in terms of shortcuts, I don't think it's the common path. It's the path of not using something outside of yourself to get there quicker. Yeah, that path, not the common. Because I don't actually think I think the path I'm talking about is actually not common anymore, at least.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think let's start with some fundamentals. The path to explore inside, breath work, meditation, journaling, time alone, certainly like just managing whatever is coming into you. And that's not just food, that's all of it, really. We're talking about what? Monks?
Pause. Continue, bro.
How do I continue? It wasn't just one; it was multiple, and you even muted yourself after that so you cover up your laugh. So that's hilarious. All of that. I don't know where I was. I don't.
My
Someone
fault,
hit
bro.
pause on my train of thought.
My fault.
Ash, if you need to cut this part out, feel free.
Don't ever. This is it.
Thank you, Himbo.
Shout out Himbo.
I don't know where we left
Oh,
off. I don't know
man.
where you left off either. I'm sorry, Stu.
It's all good.
Bam, 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 bam.
bam.
Oh my gosh. But I hear your point though. I mean, the point being these are tools, right? Just like a knife is a tool. A knife you can use it as a tool or it can cut you. Right. And that's kind of where we're going with this. So, we're very open-minded here on the Good Life. We're certainly not. I had to, and it hurt me. It hurt me to do it today, guys. It hurt me to do it today, but I had to take the other side of what is the common narrative that I see, particularly for young folks, as is coming up. And I think it's going to continue moving in this direction, right? What musician do we know that doesn't partake of cannabis? What, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's no longer the thing to do. It's like we've shifted kind of so far this way where it's like, I'm looking at 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds that are like, their brains they're just not ready to take those shortcuts, but they're taking them. It's happening.
10 years
I see
old?
this.
My gosh.
Yes.
That's frightening.
Very, very young folks. Yes, it's happening. Their favorite rapper, their favorite mumble rapper is doing it. Their favorite rock and roll, and it's not just, I don't want to just put it all on the rap, but their favorite rock and roll person, their favorite movie star is doing it. Like they're doing it. Everybody's doing it. You doing it? Everybody's doing it. Right? But that's what I'm seeing. And keep in mind, I have younger siblings. So for me, I think it's kind of like now it's more, when it was just me, like fine. But like now I'm looking over my siblings. I'm like, what are they exposed to? Like, I'm listening, the stuff they're watching. You guys remember this, right? What are you consuming? The stuff they're watching, the stuff they're listening to, the stuff they're smelling, right? Now it's everywhere, all right? I have my siblings come visit me. I can't take them anywhere without them smelling marijuana. And they know it now. I didn't know what it was when I was their age, right? So that's kind of the stuff. I'm speaking more to that. And I think it's important that we speak to that because on this day and age, today particularly, it's like, oh, yeah. No mention of any of the side, especially from people who are not demonizing it. We're not demonizing it. Like, we're not casting aspersions or any of that things on it. But we also have to be honest. Like, it does mess with your mind to some. That's what's happening, and that's why I gave that chemical explanation of it. All drugs dehydrate certain parts of your brain so that you can have the effect that you're having. It's a dehydration process that's taking place, right? Point blank. You dehydrate a part of your body, whether it's your lungs, whether it's your certain part of your brain, for you to have that release, that forced release of endorphins. That's what's happening. And if kids are doing that at this age or at a certain age, and even adults who already have an imbalance, anxiety's going out the roof, right? It might calm down your anxiety for an hour to 12 hours to 2 days or whatnot. But now you need more of that stuff to get back to the same level of low anxiety that you were. And when you come out of that, you actually have higher anxiety.
Absolutely. I would say that's probably the biggest withdrawal symptom. I was thinking about that earlier after I said it. The anxiety after drinking, for example, extremely, extremely high. And if you don't understand what's causing that, you may begin to like question so many things about your lifestyle, about who you are, why am I anxious? So more of that needs to be shed light on.
Absolutely. I'm curious, gentlemen, as we like wrap up, like where do you think this cannabis conversation goes, this 420 conversation goes? Kobi, you brought up some great points about like, what the youth, what our society, what the culture is seeing right now, listening to, consuming. And then we have, right, the boomers, the other side that has demonized it for a long time. And Now we got like money in the mix because of the cannabis industry, and right, obviously follow the money, right? What's going to start happening as far as propaganda? Then we got the government stepping in and going to start taxing. And so, where do you think this conversation goes from all of our standpoints? Maybe as we kind of tie it all together, what should people be aware of? Just kind of closing thoughts on like this whole cannabis conversation. Either one of you.
Yeah, well, sure. I'll put some thoughts out there. I'm not sure where it's going, but I'll guess. I think the conversation is going to get bigger, in the sense of there'll be more usage, there'll be more folks talking about it. The conversation is going to get from less underground to more overground, etc. But the thing that always gets me is, the government gets involved, wages this war on drugs, loses the war, by the way, because here we are, right? They have lost the war. Let's be clear on this. Government has lost the war on drugs. It's done. Finito. Stop. Here we are freely celebrating something that's got millions, let me say thousands, because I don't know if it's millions, but I would guess millions of people that have been through the prison system for a plant. For a plant, y'all. All right. This is where I take the other part of it. It's like, why? Why? Right? And the demonization we're talking about didn't come from normal roots. It came from the government, right? So what we're talking about is not like people just walking down the street just like decided to demonize it. No, it was a concerted propaganda efforts, right, to demonize this stuff from the government. So, I don't want to say from the government, like without giving specifics, but I'm not, because, you guys know how these conversations go. But let's get the government out of this. I hope. I don't know where it's going, but I hope we can get the government out of this. I used to think, hey, make it legal and then tax it. No, because I don't even necessarily think like the government should have been involved, period. End of story. I don't think they should have been involved at all, right? Government's there to protect against whatever, like literally the most limited phase of that as possible. Meaning like even that, I don't want to go down that route. But what I will say, guys, is like the government doesn't get involved in any aspect of lifestyle that makes it better. Ever. There's no historical anything that tells us that they get involved in any aspect, whether it's your bedroom, whether it's what you do with your body, whether it's
overseas war,
enough. They don't make anything better. They do not make anything better, right? So here we are. They demonized it, right? Did all this propaganda efforts, told a whole bunch of lies, scared a whole bunch of people. Now people realize, oh wait, they lied. Oh shoot, now I'm gonna like stuff it and consume as much of it as I can, right? If it was left to the people, I think we would have figured out a normal harmonize. We would have found harmony. Not everybody would be using it because not everybody needs it. And people that do, it would be very casual. It would not be that crazy. It would not be an insane amount because now it's not cool anymore, right? We take that aspect out of it. So, I hope, I don't know where it's going, but I hope we can get the government out of it. Because now we're here doing what? We're begging the same people that demonized it to come police it. All right?
Yeah.
We're begging the same people that created the problem. To solve the problem. How? They're not going to do it. They're not doing a good job right now. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with that. That's okay. You have your opinions. I have mine. The government don't do shit to make anything better. And yes, I said it. They don't do nothing to make anything better. And that's just facts. So get your hands out of my cookie jar.
Pew, 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 pew.
Big amen to everything you just said. I'm just going to do a quick giveaway here. So for anybody out there that is struggling to identify whether or not a substance like 420 has a good, neutral, negative overall impact on your life, are you tracking it? Are you aware of the intentions? Why are you using it? And do you actually have something where you can look back and say, here's how it affected these different types of situations? Are you informed on it? Ask yourself questions. Don't just assume. Don't just assume that because people around you do it or because a celebrity does it, that you're going to be able to just kick it with this substance and it's not going to have any negative impacts on your life. You've got to be aware of the intention. You got to be responsible. You got to have ownership. So hit me up if you got a problem trying to figure that out. I've done it with multiple people already.
There we go. Ownership. And I'll bring it home, guys. The part that I'll kind of expand on a little bit is where this conversation is going. I often look back at history. I think history, right, is a great, predictor of the future. If you look at prohibition, if you look at when alcohol was illegal in this country, if you look at the rise of big tobacco, and you can start to kind of look at some of the ways that this could be similar, how this plays out, how the conversation plays out. At one point in time, smoking cigarettes was the cool thing for moms because of, right, how they pitched it, right? And so it doesn't really matter. Now we're having the conversation around cannabis, but these are things that have happened, right? It's nothing new under the sun. It was a different drug before. It was a different substance before. It's always been something. It's just once again, government gets their hand in, figures out how to tax it, how to monetize, how to put laws and rules around it. Once follow the money, once big corporations and bigger industries have an incentive to lobby and to get laws put in place, right? These are all the things that are going to start popping up. We had a conversation before we even jumped on, just specifically about like the industry from an investment standpoint, right? Like as a money person from an investment standpoint. And I said, well, I'm waiting around until we see how this thing is going to shake out. Everything's very early right now. And I think when the government does come in, shut some things down, builds it back up, there's going to be more regulation, more laws, more of those things. Then we have some guidelines of where the money should go so that, right, that part of the industry takes off. But I think there's a lot of unknowns as of right now. I hope that we can be some of advocates for pushing the health conversation forward, the health aspects of marijuana and like some of the concerns. I think we have to start having those conversations also along the lines of our mindset and how we use it and why we're using and all of those things. But also from a financial standpoint of just, is this investable? Are there things that from an industry standpoint, you can look forward to saying, hey, I think this is the area that will take off, whether it's for medical use, whether it's, other types of uses. But I think we have to keep that on the radar as well and keep the conversation rolling. I just think that we should have these conversations. Anything that is becoming a bigger topic in society, I think we have to get it out there, become more aware, and start talking about it more. So that's my 2 cents.
Awesome. So is that everything for you guys?
I think that's
it.
Okay. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for us today. If you like what you guys heard, subscribe, smash that like button. Tune in next Monday for another good one, and share this with somebody that honestly would love or hate this episode, because all press is good press, especially on controversial topics like 420. So until next time, keep living the good life.
Later, guys.
Welcome to the good life.
Get your hands out of my cookie jar.